Hello, my friends. I'm Andrea, and I want to welcome you to this new old edition of a very important topic, which is the financial calendar that I use in order to give you a glance at a certain month or week so that you can zoom in. We do have a version of it for the year as well. And I would like to reiterate, repackage. I think this is the third tutorial that I would do. I think the basics are quite important to rediscuss, to refine, and to give even more examples regarding a certain topic, especially now where we can see that we have a lot of events in the sky, and it's also quite challenging, to predict the day, and sometimes it's really not possible. Like we do have in the time of eclipses, we will have a glance, but things will really happen with a different speed that it will be very difficult for us to tap into and to estimate. And we do have also planets going retrograde. This will also complicate the whole prediction. And now what we had on April 8th was an eclipse with Mercury retrograde on top of it. So the worst, time to predict. But anyway, we want predictions all the time. So it's important to see how we can interpret, because it's about interpretation. It's about giving you a rough outline of what is there, and based on other indicators you have, fundamental and technical analysis, of course, you can come up with targets or with the corner KPIs that you need for your strategy in order to execute it. Investing and trading is so really varied, I would say, that each of us have their own way to do it. It's not the best way to do it, or the perfect or the correct way to do it, but it's like going into the market and getting out of it with profit. This is all that matters. So that being said, I would like to make a overview of the whole calendar again. I would like to walk you through the symbols and to give an interpretation of the transits for a certain month. So I would go for a month. I would give an example from the past. And I think I can go through a year-related calendar as well from the past year, because I don't want to disclose something that is, under the paywall. But yes, we go about the past, and this will be the way to interpret it. So it's like an example that you can use this information over and over again for any update that I do. Now, I want to say that I'm pretty aware that it's impossible, basically, with the amount of symbols that I have in the calendar, which are pretty many. I mean, it's still confusing for people in some days. And it's impossible to really grasp the whole reality. So I want to tell you, okay, what I omit as well, and how complex the whole landscape is. So again, we try to approximate the reality, to do a summary of it, and to use it for our purpose, but it will not be a perfect blueprint, a perfect alignment to what you see in the sky. So even if you have the exact time of day, the exact hour and minute, and you have a certain transit activated, this will not really happen, at that time. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it doesn't. So I would like to go into that, and after this general overview, we go into the symbols. I will explain you what the symbols are, what do they mean, and we will go through examples as well. So that being said, let's start, and I would like to give you an overview of the whole mechanics, or how I see it. How can we use astrology to estimate the markets? So first of all, there are different types of astrology. We know we have the Vedic astrology, which would go with Sarvatomudra chakra, with nakshatras, also with signs and transits as well. So also Gemini, elements, and it depends on the astrologer. We can really consider a lot of method here. So it's a very advanced and very rich toolbox. And we have also the Western astrology, which would go a lot into aspects, progressions, also different transits, only the major aspects, the minor aspects, and other, mechanics that are used in the Western astrology. Maybe we blend some of them because it's impossible to really go through all of them. Then you never finish your work as an astrologer, and you work 3 hours and you still don't have the prediction for Bitcoin for the next week. So we need to be pragmatic about it. So just saying, and yes, you can miss things out. So first of all, what happens in the whole world and the way we see astrology is that all the time the planets will move in the sky. So they will really be in a certain relation to each other, and this will literally change every minute, every second. So it's not really humanly possible to grasp all the movements. Some movements are more important than others. They will happen at a lesser frequency. They will really pinpoint major events like the major aspects, for example, like major crossing of stars that have financial significance, like Algol, for example, or we can have a certain constellation activated via transit, like Venus activating, for example, Ardra Nakshatra. We can for sure expect some turbulence, on currencies and cryptocurrencies. But we do have also a natal chart of the asset itself, of the financial asset, each and every time. And why I say that? Because the planets, as they move in the sky and the whole relationship between them, they will affect in a unique way that natal chart of the asset. And the way the solar system is built tells us that only in 24,000 years, according, to the cycle and the era we are living in, at macro, mundane, universal level, we will have the very same chart like today. So this is valid for humans, this is valid for companies, this is valid for any chart you do. So it's an astral fingerprint of the moment, which is unique. It could be the moment of birth for you, the moment of incorporation for a certain company. It could be the first trade, on the Binance exchange for INA, for example. And it could be a lot of other things, so any event that you can grasp and think of. And any event that has a beginning and an end, so to speak, in the physical world, which we have this limitation, can be predicted, between the 2 points. Of course, the prediction will give you a certain direction. It will not be accurate to the minute. Now, we have modern software, also astrologers, we work with that, and we will see a certain aspect activated on a certain day and hour and minute. Yes, we have this information, but the reality is not really like this. If it would be that simple, I think astrology would be the best job in the world, and everybody would like to be an astrologer. Everybody would have a rate of success of at least 95%, which we know it's super difficult. I would say it's impossible. We can see the reality to 70%, in my opinion, at a maximum. The other 30% is really, to the gods. It's not to us. And we are very happy if we can really gauge the major points so that we go in the right direction at least, and we have a positive outcome. Are we perfect on the way? No. And this is not even so important, in my opinion, as long as you have good results, even with a certain delay, but still the outcome is good. Now, we have the aspect at a certain hour and minute of the day. So I would like to make this analogy like this is a diet. This is what we eat. But the digestion doesn't happen on the spot. So the effect on the price action in case of Bitcoin, for example, you know that Bitcoin has a Venus trine Mercury, which is positive, and this happens at 2 p.m. and it's today. And you don't see it materialized. You don't see. So let's say that it had a tough transit the other day or in the morning, and until it recovers, it will take time because this will be merged. So it would be always an influence between these. So it's not like only this happens. Other 1,000 things happen, and in the calendar we have the major things that are happening. So this means that we approximate, okay? So high level, major, this is really the outcome. We have these two influences at the same time, and we believe that one is stronger than the other. Sometimes it is, sometimes it doesn't, because we have other things going on that we don't compute. It could be a lot of minor aspects, minor influences that happen, that they add up, you know, and then they can really change the outcome and the prediction that we have for a certain hour of the day. But usually the ones that happen at day level, they would get materialized after some time, like digestion takes place, you know, regardless what you ate. But what we can say what Bitcoin is, but not exactly when the digestion happens. So of course, we identify, based on observation, some, transits that could be activated fast, or they are really unpredictable and can come out of the blue. At least you know that. You don't know when it happens, but you know that either today or the day before, the day after, we will have some turbulence. And this is something that still gives you a sort of precaution, and you can adapt your strategy to really be aligned with this. So this is what is possible. Now, what happens as a result is a combination of all the things. So when you have the horoscope of Bitcoin, for example, you will have the result of all the planets in the sky, what relation is between them, and their effect on the natal chart on that day. And again, we give a snapshot of the most important bits and pieces, which in general work. I say in general, eclipses are a problem. When the planets turn retrograde, especially 3 days before and after, depending on the planet. If it's an outer planet, then it's even 1 week before and after. So basically, this is what we are given. So this is the level of insight that we can have. And we do have also for Bitcoin, the influence of the macroeconomic, landscape, especially now after the ETF. I'm filming this on April 11th, so it's after the approval. This will be influenced a lot from the market dynamics, from the macro view. So here we can look, for example, at S&P 500, and in 2023 there was a good correlation with Nasdaq. So on top of that, you look at the macro, and you do that anyway. You would look at the charts, you would have your macro indicators that you can analyze for the market. So it's not only one place where you go and you see exactly what the direction would be. Astrology also can't do that. It will be another indicator for you, but rather for the future, and not necessarily based on the patterns of the past, which are what most indicators do. And what we have here is a very complex soup, so to speak, of the astrology that really flows into the actual result on the price action. And again, despite of the fact that software tells you, the day and the time, depending on the planet, you will have less accuracy. And you have an idea, yes, if it's, up or down, or it's, multiple forces to really drive the price action. And I would say that in most of the cases, whatever happens in the chart of the asset will overrule the general influence of the planets in the sky, so to speak. Because most of the time we don't have outstanding events. Outstanding events are eclipses, are big conjunctions, for example, between Uranus and Jupiter, happened last time in Taurus in the tropical zodiac 84 years ago. So you can imagine it's a big thing. Even the Saturn-Mars conjunction, which was exactly yesterday, and we felt it strongly also one day before, was also a 2-year frequency event. So it's like it happens once in 2 years. So for sure we will feel it. And in general, when the aspects are so rare, so to speak, they will be stronger felt, and they will overrule the horoscope of the asset in general. Based on my experience observation, I see that this happens. Also, what can disrupt, but again, not at all times, is when an important, transit on a Pushkara Bhaga or, on an important star really happens that can really pump the whole market. And we don't know why. We see, for example, that Bitcoin has a negative influence on that day, but still it pumps like crazy and you are sort of surprised. So it's always a good way, to know what happens in the sky. So if we go now into the calendar itself, for this purpose, I created the weather. So this is the weather forecast. So for each day, you see a cloud that is also with a rain there. So this is even, worse for free level, so to speak, and the stormy weather with the cloud, and you can really see the thunderstorm there. And this is the negative influences, yes, but they are not equal. So I put them based on the intensity of the aspect. For example, the aspect will dictate how, potentially how damaging it is actually. So, for example, a square is not so damaging as a conjunction, which is negative. Again, conjunctions are with positive and negative polarity, and usually, of course, I would depict it with either red or green in order to reflect this. And the others are pretty clear. So I think conjunctions would be the most controversial in general. We have the squares and we have the oppositions, which are bad in general, so it's negative. And we do have the trines and the sextiles, which are positive. And for that, I have the positive weather, so to speak. So the strongest would be a bright sun on the sky. So it's quite suggestive. So therefore, I'm saying, yes, the whole situation is complex, but I try to grasp it, in a summary with simple elements. So it's a bright sun in the sky, so this is the best you can have. Then you do have a sun with a smaller cloud. And this is also, so it's the middle ground. And you have a bigger cloud and a bit of sun, so that would be really the least positive, so the least strong aspect astrologically. This doesn't always map into the price action in terms of magnitude. We would like to be able to map it, but based on observation, we see sometimes it's not. And usually there are also other factors playing out, and sometimes it is. So it depends. But for you, it's a way, because usually when it's a conjunction, like it was on the 10th, and we saw it on the 9th already between Saturn and Mars, it was pretty tough. Now, what is there is, this intensity, so to speak, and you have an idea how the weather is. So this is what happens in general in the sky. But what you don't have, and I cannot put it in these symbols only, in such a small set of symbols, you do not have the planets themselves. So, for example, a Saturn Mars is much, so it's rare and it's tougher than, for example, a Mercury Mars, for example. This is also tough enough, I would say, but Saturn Mars would be definitely tougher. Or think you would have a Uranus Mars square. This is also very rare and it's quite tough, So even if the intensity is lower, Uranus being an outer planet and it has such a full force for sudden developments and for significant ups and downs, this will be something that I cannot really put in the calendar, because if I would not have these 3 symbols for good weather and 3 for bad weather. I might have, 30 for each of them at least, I would say. Therefore, what I do usually in the membership group is to talk about the calendar. So I will talk about aspects. I gave also some free samples of this. So it's important to know what the planet is. Now, also, the thing is, the aspect is exact on a day, but it will span the whole week. With a certain Mars, it's the whole week. It could be stronger one day before it's exact, actually. One day roughly, if a few hours, but when it is exact, and it's for 1 week. If we have, a less negative one, like for example, to give a Venus-Mars, which could be also positive at times, because it's also about passion, it's about people really being engaged in investing, because this can happen as well. It's a sign in the sky, but per se, this would be negative, on an asset. But still, the fact that it's positive in the sky or negative, this would matter, on the outcome. Now you do have also the days, and the days are also in different colors, and there are 3 flavors of red and 3 flavors of green, and that's it. So I can see the only major aspects, to be honest, and I would like to go now into concrete examples, so to see how the notation looks like, to share my screen and to go through all the symbols so that we have a grasp of what happens in the financial asset. We do have the financial calendar tutorial in front of us, and this is the calendar updates. So I would like you to start from here in detail explanation, regular transits and volatility, which is a update that I did at some moment in time. So this calendar evolved throughout the years, and this is on my website, stockmarketastro.com. It's linked on each forecast with, in the end, in the text description of the monthly forecast for an asset, any asset. I will put it each and every time for your reference. And we do have also recorded tutorials that would be shorter. So now for me, this is a big deep dive in case you want to go at this level, because you can use it also in a very simple way. So the bigger the green and the more the green, the pump would be higher. The same thing is for the red. So red is also a bit more controversial, because in general, red would be much more difficult to estimate. So I tell you from experience, the drops, we know they don't happen so often, because otherwise people won't be in the market, in the stock market for such a while, and they wouldn't make gains. Therefore, it's more about the green than the red. But when the red happens and the red is big, at least this is something that you should take into account. And I would like to go now into the symbols. So here at day level in the financial asset horoscope, I give more information in the sense that I will say how serious it is from a planet perspective, whatever influence is there, with the font size. So the font size is a way for me to express, is this a longer term aspect? Is this really an influence from an outer planet that is very strong? So the bigger the font, the stronger the influence is. And it's also long-term influence, but it's exact on that day. So around that day, not necessarily on the day, we can really expect something to happen, something big to happen, because this is what you are interested in, in something big to happen. And then if it doesn't, happen, so to speak, at that moment in time. It will happen anyway nearby somewhere. And you could argue I want only the big events, and we will go through that as well, because at the early level we give a snapshot that is more high level. But the thing is, you want to know that big is really damaged by something red nearby, too much red, even if it's shorter term, or it's really a big green, for example, that I can explore, and I say, oh, around this date there would be a peak, so then it's not that complicated. You buy it, when it drops, when you see a really decrease, in value, or an event that would really pinpoint towards a temporary value, and then you know that next week you will have a lot of green there. So this is an opportunity to make money. It's like maybe no strategy, but it's still, I recommend, TA and whatever you are used to. I use more astrology, to be honest, and this is the way I do it. Usually I go on long. Going short, it's not impossible, and sometimes it works, but you need to be careful. And I would recommend the more in the bear market. In the bull market, not really, especially when things are so volatile like nowadays. So here you can see that we have a font that is here in the normal font, which is size 20. This would be for me, it's a baseline, so to speak. And this is also the baseline of the theme in the market, which is planet Mars. You might be familiar with that from my financial astrology shorts. And this is a series which explains each planet in financial astrology. We do have this theme at level 20, so to speak, and this is coded like gray if it's neutral. So this means we have nothing. So no aspect on that day. It can happen, that the chart is not triggered. But you will have also 3 flavors of red and 3 flavors of green, according to the intensity of the aspect itself. And this is transit that is active at least 3 days before and after it's strong. So it's roughly 1 week, I would say, even 10 days, even 20 days in some cases. So for example, when the green is very deep and the red is very deep, then the effect in time would be longer, and also the drop could be serious. And it's serious not because it happens on that day and it really drops a lot, but it's serious because it happens throughout many days, and it will go down even if it's not really a trend, because something that is only 1 week, I would not say that it's a trend. And we have this, as the baseline for Mars, for example. Yes, I told you. So Mars is quite with an influence for the week. So for example, if you have 1 week with a, negative Mars, a red 20 size font level, then you can expect a turbulent week usually. And in some cases with Mars, I will put also a star, as you see it here. It's with any type of aspect it can happen. This would be very strong fluctuation during that day, so around that day. We have some special combinations that I won't disclose that really would trigger this turbulence. And then you should be aware that with Mars, so this font size, you would have, some problem there. So it's like up and down like crazy. It's really volatile, and we cannot really be so sure when we enter. And again, you could argue it can't be negative if it's up and down. It is. So it is negative, but through up and down movement. So it will not be stable. It will not be a trend. So with Mars, this star means that we have this fluctuation, the up and down like crazy. If we have a trend, then usually trends, I will put them in bigger fonts. And I don't have them here, but we will go through an example. So the font size will be bigger in case we have a outer planet, or let's say Jupiter and Saturn, which can show us longer term trends. And this will be marked with a star. Again, certain combinations can, need to take place in order for this to be triggered. And this means that it goes up and to the right, or it goes down and to the right. So usually it's a sign for you that, okay, on a downtrend, I don't recommend even buying, because you don't know if it will go up. If you have the yearly calendar already, then yes, it makes sense to look at it. But usually you need to be cautious with downward trends. You could short, of course, if you feel that this is okay, also from TA perspective, but it's good to be aware that shorts, so basically downward trends, are more difficult to gauge in general. And we do have also the small, very small font. This is font size 15. And this is for really daily. So these are really to the day. So these are maybe the most predictable. It's basically the motions of Venus, Mercury, and Sun. And they have similar cycles in terms of length, and they would really have the aspects for that day. And you can really see many, sometimes on a certain day. You don't know if it's Venus, Mercury, doesn't really matter too much, but you can have a bunch of aspects on the same day. So when you see a lot of green, you can really expect a pump even on that day. And if you have a bigger green, nearby, then this would be clearly a bigger peak. It could be a local maximum, for example. And this is important to take into account, just to have a glance. And of course, in each cell of the calendar, I will put the weather, like I said previously, what happens at market level, and there at the weather level, I don't give you a clue if this is really a big outer thing or not. This is something that I talk about usually in my videos. Again, we can do it. I'm open here to suggestions, but it might make things even more complicated, and I think it's complicated enough. Markets are complicated. Now, volatility is something that we see in the markets, and some charts have it more than the others. So here I put this mark as a star for volatility. Here I explain here, an example from Tesla, from BTC. We have it all the time, so to speak. You can see it, and it's basically triggered most of the time by Mars, I would say, but not always. And this will be marked for you with a star. So whenever you see a star in any direction, you could really expect more steam, more price movement, and even the moves could be more volatile, more significant in terms of magnitude. And you can check. So especially when you see star, you should really check with TA and to see if you have such a similar indication as well. Now we do have also other way to mark. I did that in the past. I didn't do it so often now. I did it in a different way, for example, with Uranus-Jupiter conjunction, which is purple on the 21st of April in the Bitcoin calendar. But I can put also, so I used to put also some borders of color. For example, this is a Saturn-related eclipse. I still have it big font in black, which I did also this month for April 8th. So somehow I try to mark the important events, the outstanding events at market level. But again, the best source is the video when I talk about them. Mercury retrograde is something which happens, 3 times a year, every year. Basically, it's quite regular. But Mars retrograde is a special event, and I also try to pinpoint that in the calendar, Mars being red, so it's the color of Mars as a planet. I try to symbolize it like this. Usually I explain this when I give the forecast at the week level. So here I explain that, how I mark the eclipse, and also this color for each planet, how I use it. Now, a new addition to the calendar was the fact that we noticed that on some days, really, if you think about dojis, that would go beyond pretty, much beyond the boundaries of a certain time frame. So this applies, at day level, at hour level, especially. I look here at hourly level, to be honest, because I noticed that in some cases we have the possibility that it goes, so to speak, out of bounds. This bounds being, the normal astrology of the day, which would give a certain start and end of the candle. So it would be like a long-legged doji. And this usually happens when we have certain aspects of the moon, which are major aspects and are very strong, and they can be positive and negative. And I had feedback from people, especially day traders, but again, I don't recommend this calendar for day trading. For that, we can do something, but it's much more laborious and expensive, as such. We have this warning, so to speak. Hey, during the day, we can have big moves up or down, and this could be outside of the normal daily influence. And for this, for the positive movement, I use the bright moon crescent and the red moon crescent for the negative one. Now, of course, we would like to have also others. The moon makes a lot of aspects, and this would really give you, if you take all the moon aspects of the day, then you can really do, for example, you have the times, because they would be more accurate in general, not always, but the shorter the aspect is in terms of its quality and its effect, the more accurate it would be. And then you can put this, times of the aspect, and maybe you can do AI on it, and you have the target. So I saw such movements as well. So it's not impossible, but it's very laborious work to look at all the moon aspects to see how they influence each other, also how they align with the day direction, and to really make a decision if it's up or down. And anyway, you would go into TA as well. So it's a lot of work, and maybe only for intraday trading would make sense. Now, and in some days, for example, like we saw now with such volatility from 1 hour to the other, like losing 3K, going up 4K in a few hours for BTC, this might also make sense, but it's quite a lot of work for that. And I would like to go now into the fires. The fires are the latest addition to the calendar, and they were really born out of observation with a daily group that we did for 4 months. What happens with Bitcoin each day? And it was also a sort of eclipse season. I think it was 2023, yes. That we looked at that, and we noticed that in some days we had this sudden move upward, downward in 1 hour, like losing 3K and so on. And of course, we have an hour and a minute, but these are never, almost never. Sometimes they were accurate, actually, and we called them fires. And based on observation, we identified them. We interpreted what is positive, what is negative. Usually, they come in pairs most of the time, or at least if they are not on the same day. So they are actually at hourly level. These aspects could be pretty precise, especially when we have no eclipses, no retrogrades, and so on. Then it's for sure easier to predict. And you know that something, is unstable in the market and could really drop or could really pump. And then usually these pumps are not sustainable. Also the dumps dynamics are not sustainable. I talk about Bitcoin, not about other assets, because we know how Bitcoin ticks, so to speak, at another speed, at least until now. And again, so these types of aspects happen in the market. So this is the normal fire that you see here. And we have also these fires popping up in the Bitcoin chart. They are also positive and negative, and they are symbolized with these nice AI generated images with the Bitcoin on fire, red fire and green fire, with the very same significance like here. But the thing is, it's really activated on the Bitcoin. The probability for them to happen on a certain day, you know, it's really when they appear together. So if they are together, you see the market fire and the Bitcoin fire. Even if they are in different directions, you will have a pump dump, because in the end, usually this is what happens. If you have two fires that are of the same color, it could be that the peak or the drop is more sustainable in, you know, a way, at least for the day, and it will recover or it will drop, you know, afterwards, depending what happens in the next day. So you can look at the chart and see where the where the aspects are, how big the font is, how red it is, how green it is, and then you can make the judgment. Usually when I see them, I would wait for the red fires to manifest, because they are the most difficult to predict. But I know that, okay, I need to be cautious, because I might lose a lot, so I'm usually outside of the market, and this is for me an opportunity to buy. So the safe, risk conservative way. But again, you can increase your, you know, security, so to speak, with TA, with indicators, and so on. This would be basically the elements in a nutshell. I think I didn't miss anything. And now I would like to go into the monthly calendar of Bitcoin. And this is again for the past, but this doesn't matter. So I give you an outline on how we can interpret that. And again, now lately I introduced these weekly videos where I go into the interpretation myself. And since aspects are not only valid for the day, it's very important to really look around what happens. So it's too complex, believe me. So the more green you see, the more pump it will be. The more red you see, the more drop is likely, but it's not that certain, like in the case of the green, due to the rarity of these events. Now, I would like to tell you something, because I remembered. So it's about not happening on the day, because I know it's frustrating. So for people who want to do day level trading, so intraday, it's very difficult, because you will need to rely more on the TA, in my opinion, or you go deeper into astrology and you go at moon hourly level aspects. That would be the best way to do it. And this is about the aspect and their duration in time. So for example, let's start with the small aspects, the quicker moving planets, like the Sun, Mercury, and Venus. They would be valid for that day. Also, before and after, you could have some influence, but you feel them usually on the day they are exact. And the difficulty to estimate there is the fact that we do have a multiple of them. For example, in a certain day, I have a sort of workaround for that. I see it working most of the time, I would say, but yeah, we can go into that. But I doubt that you will really look at it. And yeah, you can make money also without looking at it, but again, not necessarily day trading again. Then we do have the other topic, that is the bigger planets. Yes, and I want to explain here what we have, what kind of rational and orb of influence means that we feel the aspect. The effect is already seen. It's in the background, so to speak, with anything else that happened at the other day's level. So we have an important planet, which is Mars. Mars is the theme of the price action. It's not really big, but we do have an orb of influence depending on the speed and on the aspect. That could be 5 days before, 5 days after, 10 days before, 10 days after. Again, this is average. And 20 days before, 20 days after. So that you can see how complex this actually is. Then we do have the Jupiter, which is really 1 month before, 1 month after. We could argue even 3 months before, 3 months after in case of high intensity aspect. And we do have also the mid, so to speak, like 2 months or 1 month and a half. That would be the mid-intensity aspect with Jupiter. With Saturn, it's usually 3 months before and after the aspect is exact. So before and after that day where I write with the big font, the green or the red. So it's already, happening. Because you might wonder, okay, but I had a big green and then, Saturn comes after 1 month. Why the big green really doesn't manifest? Because already Saturn influenced it. So if you have a multiple months overview, then you really see that on a longer term for people who have longer term trades or investing horizon. Then Uranus is usually at least 4 months, I would say, before and after, but we have also 6 months typically, and even 1 year, I would say, 1 year, 1 year and a half, before and after that it can happen. So again, this is super long term. You do not really need to think about that because this is really too far reaching. And Neptune is really literally 1 year, I would say. So you'd feel a Neptune and it felt stronger like 3 months before and after. So for example, a Neptune square Mars, if it repeats during a year, it would really blow the whole set, meaning that, it won't move. It won't move. So it will drop and then it will stay dropped the whole year. And this is something that you can see. Of course, you can still make money if there are other good aspects, but very short time framed. So you need to be very careful there. So you won't have growth, and expect, okay, I will really make money long term if you are with a longer term focus. And Pluto is really disastrous, I would say, even 2 years. If you have a Pluto, it can really slow down the growth. More than that, we have different behaviors with this. So one is that it will be a sharp drop out of the blue, which is Uranus in general. Neptune would be very subtle. It will happen, you don't feel it usually. It's like a slow death. And even slower is Pluto. I would say that is really a symbol for, stagnation. And it's not so subtle, so sometimes it can really mean the end, because it's also used, in analyzing death. So Pluto is really something that if you have it negatively in a year, then this means it's a disaster. But not all the time, because if you have many positive aspects from Jupiter, like it was the case of Tesla for 2023, I believe, and you see even 24, it's not really, at optimal level, not how it used to be. So you see, this is like, a longer term influence astrologically. Of course, it's difficult to pinpoint what exactly, if you don't go into the days, each day, what influence it has. And now the magnitude is also higher with the bigger, long-term planets, which do not move that quickly. And this is key because Uranus, it takes 84 years roughly to cross the zodiac. Neptune, it takes 165 years, and Pluto is 248. And this is average because the speed of the planet, to make things more complicated, would change if the planet is retrograde. For example, it would be much slower. Like Mercury, it turned retrograde now, and in the first 3 days after going retrograde, it was 5 times less speed. So you have it basically stationary, we say, on that day, and you have it stationary for the 3 days, I mean, very low speed. It will take up speed, but it takes also time. If Neptune is stationary, then good luck. It's one week before, 1 week after. And with asteroids like Sedna, with an even bigger orbit, you will have even 1 month of station, so to speak, like 1 minute. It will not really move. And then it will be very difficult to estimate. So when this happens, usually it's more difficult to forecast anything. And that being said, I gave you this overview. So again, the more rare the aspect is, like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the more larger would be the influence in time, so it would be longer, and the larger would be the magnitude that we can expect from the move, either downward or upward. No? So it's the rarity of the aspect that would say, okay, how big is that, basically. So this is what we can see. So if you see a big green and you see also a star which will make a trend, for example, Uranus can make a trend, then okay, this will be really it. It's quite interesting. Yes, so let's go now into the screen sharing and we go for a monthly calendar for Bitcoin. We take the example for Bitcoin for April. As we said, it's April 2024. I would like to go into the beginning of the month to talk about the past, as I film it on the 11th. So let's see what we have here. And yes, this is also fresh in your mind because it's quite a eventful period. I think maybe some of you paid more attention than usual due to the eclipses. And yes, here you can see also how the calendar cannot really go into all the details, especially now with eclipse and Mercury retrograde. So we do have, for example, on the 1st, so what this means is we have no aspect, so the Bitcoin chart is not triggered, but during the day we have drops at hourly level. So these are the red moon crescents that you can see. So these drops will happen multiple times in a day. Then on the 2nd, we do have a mixed day. So it's a negative day at day level, so to speak. So more of a bearish influence. Of course, whatever aspect was before at the end of March matters. And on the 31st, we had a positive aspect, which was long-term from Saturn. So this would really be considered in the picture as well. And this means that we will have a less growth on the day, possible drop, but then we will have recovery because we have this volatile green fire, and we have the green fire at Bitcoin level. And we have also a bright moon crescent on the day. So after the drop, we will get also during the day a recovery, and not necessarily in a sudden manner, because the bright moon crescents are not necessarily sudden. So what comes suddenly is the fire. So it's a volatile day. It will start maybe less positive. I don't write times here, as you see. So I try to put them in order, but I do not guarantee, It's like here we had a more negative influence, and then this also started negative, so at whole day level. So it starts negative and then it would go more positive. And yes, if you remember, I think this was also a big a big hiccup because we had on Monday Mercury going retrograde, which overruled the chart in this case. So it was a market level event, and we could see drops. So in this case, this is not something that I put on the calendar. It's quite detailed. I could have put a green for Mercury on the cell. So let me in the comments, let me know if you would like to have that as well. So reason being that Mercury is going retrograde 3 times a year typically, and it's not something super outstanding. But sometimes it can be, so to speak, with a big effect, as you see, if you combine two things that are really from, two sources. So like the two negative doesn't look so dangerous, but with a Mercury retrograde, it was dangerous nevertheless. On the 3rd, we see recovery and pump. The weather is good, so we have a bright sun in the sky. So a possible local peak is possible during the day. We have a bright moon crescent, and at the day level, we have no aspect. So when you see no aspect at day level, this means that the market astrological influence would prevail in general. And it's usually easier to predict, not always, but sometimes it is. Then on the 4th, it's positive at the whole day level, so it's like a day level aspect, either from Mercury, the Sun, or Venus. And we do have also increase during the day, but also negative volatility. So it will never go, like a rocket ship upwards. When I look at the calendar, I look also at the 1 hour chart. So there you can see that during the day, we had some drops, some volatility, which could have come suddenly. It could be big or small, but here you see the intensity of the aspects is not really, big. Therefore, big moves are less likely, but we cannot exclude them for sure, especially in such a volatile period like we are nearing the Uranus-Jupiter conjunction on April 20th, 21st. So therefore, we will see this as a possibility for enhanced volatility during the day. And we have on the 5th, again, very good weather, and we have a bright moon crescent, but be attentive that on the 6th we do have a lot of negative energy. At the day level, you see 6 is red, so again it's Mercury, it's Venus or Sun influence, so it's like short term, but still could be felt also one day before. This happens especially in the case of important meetings, market, basically monthly closing, so to speak, or, Fed meeting in the market and so on. Most of the time I saw that there's some CPI or important meeting report on the day where we see the fires at market level especially, and then Bitcoin would react accordingly, in any direction. Sometimes it's not so easy to see. But here on the 6th, which is Saturday, we see 2 red moon crescents, and we see the Bitcoin fire, which is red. So it's a lot of negative energy, but again, the fires could also happen 15 hours before, 15 hours after. So this is based on our experience, on our observations so far. And again, these are not a single aspect of the day. So it could turn up like this, that the major aspects would paint the picture, or if there are other minor aspects that we don't put, for all the hours, it's impossible, then we can really say that it's a more negative energy, and 15 hours before, this means we could really feel it here. So therefore, look also at the surrounding days always. So for example, 5th of April would start maybe better and would end worse, but this is again an orientation, because here on the 5th, believe me, it's not only this aspect, there are many more from 1 hour to the other. And for such an asset like Bitcoin, where volatility is so increased from 1 hour to the other, this might matter a lot in the price. So always use it with TA. Then the next week, we approach the eclipse. Eclipse was positive, was bullish. I mentioned this also quite a while in advance, so this was pretty clear. And we had indeed a pump, but again, a turbulent one, I would say, because we had a lot of turbulence in the days before. And you see here, we had also the positive aspect, but a very, very nice green that you see. Yes, it's at day level. We have the 8, which is bigger. It's black, it's bold. And also the new moon. So this is what I forgot to tell you. We have the new moon and the full moon also depicted in the calendar. And we had also the bright sun on the sky, which was a positive aspect that enabled really the pump as well. Also, what is important to look at is what happened before and after. So it's pretty green here. So here, this is a way to say, oh, these days there would be a pump. Yeah. So the 9th really, so here the stormy weather comes. So this means that it's a negative aspect, so the weather is really bad because it's the worst it can be. We have also market volatility, which is red. And this means this is a day of drops. 9 also has very positive, but also very negative influence. So what happened on the 10th, really, we had a big drop. Now, going to the day of today, on the 11th, we already saw recovery. No? So you see here 2 day level aspects. So they are Mercury, Venus, or Sun, now you know. And we have also the good weather, which is really, positive and leads towards recovery. And this is something that you can observe. And this, let's say, how it goes further, I would go only 2 days because anyway, I will give the other week in full detail to the audience. So again, it's 11th of April, 2024 when I film this because you might also see it for your reference at a later time. Since the way to read it is basically the same, of course, I will jump in to say about the weather, how important this is, how big it is, so what planets are involved. Actually, I mention it, but not all. I cannot mention all of them, but the major ones, I mentioned them in the monthly videos. So stay tuned for that. Always check the monthly videos. They are always public, of course, in the membership group. They will be accessible earlier in any case. Now on the 12th, you see the weather is bullish. So this is a very bullish aspect. Actually, it's a Uranus trine Lilith that we expect for tomorrow. It's not really a, classical bullish aspect, but Lilith would be about increasing the spirit of adventure, the spirit of risk, which can turn also negatively. As we see, we do have a Bitcoin red fire on the day, so a sudden drop during the day is not excluded. But still, we do not have the other fire. So the red fire really passed, it manifested, we saw it on the 10th. So it could be that this doesn't really occur in a big way, but it's still looming. It's still a probability on the 12th, and it's Friday. Now, on the 13th, we see no trigger of the chart because it's gray. So we have no aspect at the day level, but during the day, we do have a moon aspect, which is exact and could really bring the price down, outside of the boundaries of the day. If we think about the astrological influence. So it's astrologically with TA, you can check and see, for example. So I would say, in general, I would expect a pump on Friday, or even, in the first part of the day, and then a dump, I think, wouldn't be really excluded, and the weekend would be maybe stagnating. Another topic is the weekend in general, especially lately. Now I know that we are in the bull market, but especially in the bear market, we could see that there was no movement due to the lack of sufficient transaction volume. So the astrology would really happen, in my opinion, but you don't see it because the bars are so small. So if you look at the hourly chart, it's really no movement in most of the cases. Of course, there are exceptions to it as well, and we have them, but I see that usually the weekend needs to be seen like a sort of sideways, maybe a little bit bearish or bullish, but no big move. What is bad? And we see that a lot of astrology, big astrology, happened on the weekend, to be honest. The problem is that this manifests the day after, either the day before or the day after. So on Friday you can see something, or on Monday, and Mondays would be the most encountered, so to speak, the most often cases that the astrology would really pump, dump, pump, how you want to call it. It will manifest in a mix, in a big cocktail on Monday. And then Monday would be really the merge of the weekend with whatever we have, on Monday, and also the next days, look at them as well. So therefore, Mondays make really the most difficult day of the week to predict in terms of the price action, also based on my experience. Not only with crypto, with stocks, it's the same. And here, surprises can really happen both ways. So it's always good to be attentive to what happens on Friday and on Monday. You have the practice with PME gap and so on. So it's only adapting it, the practices and the habits that you have to astrology as well, to this calendar, and use it as an indicator in your toolbox, not to saying, okay, this is really the crystal clear future of it. But it gives you nevertheless a good orientation, I would say, in most of the cases. Now, that being said, we went, in the, monthly level, so to speak, and I would like to give also an example from 2023 for Bitcoin, so that I don't disclose the yearly for 2024, just to have an idea what would be the bird eye view of it. And regarding this, I would like also to go into the legend and the intensity of the aspects. So that would be the last thing that I want to consider, because I doubt that somebody would do the math. I tried to do it for a while, but I do not see it really bringing a lot of value. Still, when there are multiple aspects on the same day, you can still make some sense of it. Then let's go into the yearly view of Bitcoin in the financial calendar. So here we have the yearly view. I would like to give you a glance at a bird's eye view of the year. And the aspects are the outer planets in general. Outer planets are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So these long-term things which are for years, for months. So this will give you a glance. Okay, does this asset really work? Do I see a transit and such a negative or positive influence? Do I see, for example, multiple influences that are positive, which could also be a brilliant year for that asset? And even better, do I have a trend from a bigger planet? This would mean that I have a lot of hope, so to speak, to make money with that asset, to be very lucrative during that year. And what do we have? We have a quarterly view, yes, because we think a lot in quarters, and we would put really the big influences. So I would not analyze here Mercury, Venus, the Sun, for example, and the Moon not at all, because that would be really during the day. So what we have here, we have these outer planets, we have Jupiter and Saturn, and we do have Mars. Mars is very important because it's the theme of the price action. So the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto would be font size 30. So it's the biggest font possible. And I do have Rahu as well in this category. Rahu is also pretty rare, I would say, and they are use only a special combination, so to speak. And we do have a font size 25, for example, like you see this 8, which is about either Jupiter or Saturn. So it would be also a trend. So here you see a trend downwards. Oh, this is a problem. And then we see still recovery. So 19th is a positive trend from Jupiter most likely, but could be Saturn as well. And we do have also the influences from Mars, which are font size 20. So now to answer the question, would 19 be a big bump? Yes, likely yes, but for a week or so. So, for example, if you see a big peak here, then it's good to exit or to exit nearby before 26. So here it's also about your risk management approach to see how TA is doing, for example, at that time, what is the volume, the transaction volume and everything. Because 28, so what is looming really at the corner, we do have some negative energy. And this is stronger than the 26, even if they are mid. So I will say I will go into that really at the end, because again, I think it's too much math to really swallow. Also, it's not that complicated in the end, but if you don't make it a habit to really do it, I think it's difficult to do it only, less often, so to speak. For each month, I would tell also the days when the aspects are exact. So here you can see, for example, April pretty turbulent in the beginning. So for example, this 15th for me is not very strong. Yeah. So it's a big, short term in a few days. For example, if I buy something on the 5th and I exit around 15, 16, for example, yes, maybe something is there, but it's not a trend, as you see. So it's really a pure local peak that would depend on my best moment of entry. Now, is really 5th the best? No, not really. This is also something that you would need more detail on, but it could be good if you are more longer term oriented. So again, this is more for investment purposes or longer term trades that you want to stay several months, for example, to buy something in April, so beginning of April, and to really stay through May, June, for example, July, you see it's also moving, even August, and to exit end of August, for example, or maybe on the 26th, when the TA also confirms, and then because September is pretty bearish. The months where you see it's empty, it's rare, but it happens. Nothing big really happens. So this is in general not good, because the price will stagnate, will not really go anywhere here. This is also the case. I mean, there would be fluctuation, but it's downwards for sure. So it would be a good moment to catch, to buy. You might have also a recovery, because from Venus, Mercury, or the Sun, you could have a bright green, for example, in between. And this could also offer, for short time, trades an opportunity, but it's not like, it's not something that you can really jump to say, okay, a big opportunity in September in general. And historically, it's more bearish. They have the same patterns, because some planets are cyclical, in a year, like the quicker moving ones. So I refer to the Sun, which is the most consistent. Mercury and Venus, roughly, yes. Mercury will retrograde, so it will make things more complicated. But otherwise, you can rely on them with their cyclicality. And we have Mars, which is 2 years, for example. Therefore, I put it also in a distinguished font. We have this quality attached to it as the theme of the price section, which is very important to take into account. Therefore, it's really good to take Mars into account. If it's no Mars, it's also not good. You need to have Mars in a way to have it red in order to buy, and to have it green in order to be able to cash in. October is very strong, as you see. So we have also a trend here. This is 25, so font 25 with a 10. And we have some volatility here. This is also a longer term one, which is 30, but I wouldn't say it's a disaster. So in such cases, such a big negative aspect would rather diminish growth, but it doesn't necessarily result in a long-term drop. So a drop happens nevertheless, but it won't be a long one. So you will go out of the valley relatively fast, depending on what happens afterwards. So here you see a lot of green, so it's impossible that this drop lasts ages. Then November is, for example, quite dynamic. We have some opportunities here for a shorter time frame, but it's only Mars, so we don't have a long-term aspect that would really give more direction, and it's fluctuation here. You can see several days, but still you can make some money. For example, the first days in the month should be doable as long as you exit on time. December, it's also, doable. You see here the 5th and the 27th with nice long-term aspects. And usually when you have them distributed at the beginning and at the end of the month, it's pretty good. So regardless what happens in the month, as long as it's not a big fluctuation or a trend that is negative, you can still move, or you can exit before because they are distributed, all of them, at the end of the month. And maybe you cannot make money, but it depends here what you have in January next year, and you could buy here and really wait for January if the astro is good, for example, and your TA and fundamentals would really show that. And I think this was really the case, isn't it? We remember the birthday of Bitcoin, and January was quite eventful, although it was a bit delayed with Jupiter retrograde, if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the year. So that would be a really a high overview. So this is good to see the year at a glance. And then you can say, oh, I want details. For example, this looks interesting to me. October, it's a lot. It's already a lot. But if I want to really maximize, I want to see also the day level aspect and to see what happens there. Now I link, as mentioned, the text lesson and the video lesson, and I will also link this deep dive now that I have it at the end of each calendar, where I also explain the size of the font, their significance, and so on, what I told you about Mars, the outer planets, Jupiter, and Saturn. And now, at last, I would like to go into the topic where I think people will not dive in. I also did it maybe in the beginning. So this is valid also for the weather, so to speak, the 3 levels of weather and the 3 levels of green and red, they are the same. So here I put a mathematical number that you can use in order to distinguish, if you have multiple aspects on the day, how it could be. And you take the sum, but the thing is they happen anyway at different moments in time. So that sum would be only an indicator. So nothing is really exact here. So, but it can give you an orientation if you have a lot of action. Even at month level, you can do the math. Usually this was the way I think that it's best to be applied in the stock market, where you don't have this volatility. So you'd rather do it with longer term aspects in a month, and do I need to sell it at the end of the month or not? So if it's a plus, yes, I will sell. So we do have this low intensity green, which will be a 4. The mid one is a 6, and the the brightest one, the brightest green, the strongest one is a 10. And the negative ones, the low red is -4. So negative will be, negative. Also, I would put negative numbers. This 11 is -8, and this 11, so the most red one, is -10. And you remember I told you that the mid-green is less than mid-red. And now you see also here in the table, it's a 6 versus -8. The others are really the same. So what is the rationale for it? The mid-negative one would be more rare. This is the rationale for it. Or if you see, the mid-green would happen twice more often than the mid-red in general. So when it happens, so the more rare it is, the better the likelihood is to really have a bigger impact on the price and on the course of action if you have a trend, for example. So therefore, the bigger and the more red, the more green, the stronger it is theoretically. So here, when you have more of them, you can do the math, especially in cases where you have days with contradictory movement, for example. So here, again, this is not really differentiated on the font size, as you see. So it's also, a smaller approximation. But for example, making sense of December, you would have this 4 plus 4 is an 8, plus 6 is 14, isn't it? So, and 14 minus 8. Yes, so this at this level, it would be still an 8, so it's positive, it's a plus, so to speak. So in this way, you can do it. You can do it at the day level as well. There, it could be more accurate, at least at day level, for the, for the swing trading, which is multiple days. But intraday, again, you'd need to do all of them and also all the moon aspects on top to really know at the end of the day what would be the best, approximation. So again, I would say that this is a well-educated guess, like many other indicators that you use in fundamental analysis with TA. It's not absolute. It's very hard to say exactly, at day level, at this time, how it will be. Of course, I can say the astro is like this and that, and you can think in relative terms, but to say really absolute, from midnight to midnight the other day, what would be really the overall result, it is very, very complex. An attempt, could be done, but to do it really in a very accurate and very detailed, analytical way, this would take really a lot, and it would be also much, much less affordable. I hope I gave you some light into it, and you have really a better understanding what your expectations could be. And as a closing thought, I would say use it as another tool in your toolbox, the financial calendar. It's similar in general to the charts. With the TA and FA, you can use it as a good indicator who helps you to enter and exit the markets on time. But again, this is not the oracle of the future for especially for such a volatile asset like Bitcoin. It doesn't really solve a problem like a silver bullet, but it helps solving it. Thank you for your attention, for liking and subscribing. I'm grateful for that. And until next time, be joyful. See you.